Hey guys, it's Hart breaking down the Super Bowl Showdown slate here on DraftKings, $1 million up top to first place. Hopefully, me or one of you guys could take this down solo and not split it with like 1,000 people. That'll be tough, but we'll see if we can do it. I'm going to be breaking down my favorite core plays, some pivot plays we can look at, all that good stuff in this slate breakdown. So make sure to hit that like button, check out my socials linked down below, and let's get into the slate breakdown. Before I get into the breakdown, just want to show you guys something cool here on my Twitter at HartDFS. Just a little bit of a deep dive on the past two Super Bowl Showdown slates on DraftKings. As you guys can see, last year, 10 people split first place, each taking home $160,000 each. There's only one quarterback in that lineup. And then the previous year, 750 people split. They each took home almost $2,500. And then there's only one quarterback in there as well. So that's just a little food for thought here on this Showdown slate. It really just comes down to how risky do you guys want to be. If you're going to play one lineup and you want to, have a chance of cashing, maybe taking home a decent amount of money, you're going to want to play a little bit safer, not as contrarian. And obviously, if you're playing a ton of lineups, you're going to want to play for those different type of scenarios where maybe a guy gets injured, maybe guys like MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, who haven't been involved, offensively recently. Maybe you put them in the captain and hope they have that big game. You have that luxury and of being able to do that when you're playing 150 lineups. So it really comes down to how risky do you want to be for this Showdown slate. As you guys saw the past 2 years, it's been pretty chalky. T. Higgins and then top guys like Cooper Kupp, Stafford, Mixon, Boyd. Then they got super weird with Bryce Hopkins. Usually that stuff doesn't happen, but I think he fell into the end zone for a touchdown. And then the previous year, all the big names: Gronk, Kelsey, Hill, Brady, Fenrat, and Antonio Brown. So as you guys can see, you don't have to get super, super weird on these Showdown slates. You guys can definitely keep it chalky and still have a good shot of taking down. It really comes down to if you want to split, go for the solo $1 million at first, or if you just want to win some money. So for this Showdown slate, obviously the safest route is to go a quarterback in the captain spot. As we saw the previous 2 years, it really doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened yet. I'm not saying it won't happen, especially when you have a guy like Hurts who has that huge rushing upside. But yeah, that's going to be the chalkiest route just because of the floor for them. Mahomes is averaging 26.3 fantasy points per game. Hurts is averaging 25.8. So if you want to go the chalky, safer route, I'd say throw one of them in the captain spot. I'd lean Hurts just because of the rushing upside. Patrick Mahomes' ankle is a little bit gimpy. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the one I'm going to say for the captains. For quarterbacks, if you're going to play Hurts, you can have the ability to play him naked just because he has that rushing upside. With Mahomes, I'd want to pair him with at least one pass catcher. Usually with a quarterback, you'd want to pair him with like at least two if they don't have rushing upside. It's weird with Mahomes because there's not a lot of pass catchers. Like, it's really been Kelsey on their team. McKinnon was, solid, that secondary option for a few weeks there, but he really hasn't done anything in the playoffs. All the wide receivers are hurt. They really haven't done anything in the games recently either. So it's just been super weird with that passing offense and how good they've actually been when they really only had Travis Kelce. So it's weird with the Mahomes. I'd at least put him with Kelce. Maybe you can get weird, put him with one of the other pass catchers. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the quarterback situation there. Overall, I prefer getting to Hurts in my lineup than Mahomes just because of that rushing upside. But Mahomes obviously is the better passer. So it kind of evens out. I do think Hurts will be a little bit more popular, but I do think they're going to be within 5 to 8% of each other in terms of like their ownership projections and rankings. So I think for right now, my core play is going to be Jalen Hurts in the flex. Moving on to, let's just go team by team now. So for the Chiefs, as I mentioned, Kelsey's been, clear and by far the number one option, pretty much the only option in this passing game. As we've seen the past two playoff games, he's gone off. 14 catches for 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the game where his back was blown out and he was still able to play. He caught 7 for 78 yards and a touchdown is there as well. So I do think the Eagles are going to try to force the ball out of Mahomes' hands and just make them run the ball because we know them running the ball, it hasn't been great this season. Pacheco has shown bursts, but as we saw versus Bengals, 10 for 26, 2.6 average is terrible. Their offense in terms, it's all about throwing the ball with Mahomes. So I do think the Eagles are going to try to force the ball out of Mahomes' hands, make them run the ball. So for that reason, I've liked Pacheco the past 2 games. I like him once again. I do think the Eagles are going to want the Chiefs to run the ball, keep Mahomes contained, not have him throw him all over the place with Kelsey. So I do like Pacheco as one of my other core plays on the slates. And the great thing is Now, it's not a guarantee. We know McKinnon has been, heavily involved in that passing game, and now they're both priced about the same. So maybe the ownership goes to Pacheco because of that last game. But the great thing is he usually wasn't involved in the passing game. Maybe you'd see one or two targets here and there. But that last game, he really, really helped him out. He caught 5 for 59 yards there. Had a huge one at the end of the game that it looked like he was going to get tackled for like 4 yards gain, and then broke off like of 3 people and got a first down for them. So I think they saw that, and I do think it's going to solidify him as the main option over McKinnon. Obviously, there's that chance they could definitely go to McKinnon, and he could have one of his huge games like he did towards the end of the season where he was going off, 9 for 112, 8 for 70, 6 for 52, 2 touchdowns, 1-1-2. But right now, I prefer Pacheco because he's going to be that rusher. He's more upside rushing the ball. He also has the passing upside. And CH is back as well. I think that'll eat a little bit into McKinnon's upside. Maybe it eats into all 3. We could see it where they rotate all 3 in. It'll be super frustrating. Hopefully they don't do that. But I really like Pacheco as at least a flex play. I think you could get risky in this spot and play him as a captain as well. He hasn't had a huge upside. He's pretty limited in terms of rushing the ball and catching it. But you never know. Maybe he gets a touchdown. Maybe he gets 2. And he could definitely take down the tournament. So I really like him in the flex as a pretty solid play there. Moving on. Also, as I mentioned, going back to Kelsey, it's going to be hard not to play him in the flex play. He's going to be a super chalky captain play as well. I think there is a viable chance you could definitely fade him just because they're going to throw everyone on him. They should hopefully make the Chiefs run so that maybe it takes Kelsey out of play. Maybe he only catches, 6 for 60 yards and he gets 12, 13 fantasy points at 10K. If other people step up, do a little bit better, he could definitely not be an optimal. So there's always that, risky route of fading him. I don't suggest it, but yeah, I'm not going to make him a core play as of right now, but he's kind of on that fringe core play for me. McKinnon, he's just more of a contrarian play for me. Obviously, CEH is back. I prefer getting to Pacheco because he kind of solidified that role, at least as of last game, over McKinnon as like the pass catcher in the backfield. Now, I'm not saying, McKinnon can go in there and be the main guy. There is really no rhyme or reason. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Moving on to the wide receiver situation, which has been terrible for the Chiefs. It's a headache. MVS, not sure why he's 6,200. I mean, he's coming off a huge game, but you got to remember their whole wide receiver core was hurt last game besides MVS. They're pulling dudes out of the stands, being like, dude, just go run a curl. We just need you to act like we're going to throw you the ball. I mean, they were just so depleted. It made no sense how a team got that injured and still were able to win the game. But MVS is one of those guys where hate the price tag. He's going to be super low owned because of that, because he's super, super pricey and he's super, super boomer bust. Just look at his box score. I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was seeing solid targets. And then from there, I mean, there's a few games here and there, but it's been really hard for him to have any upside. It's really just boomer bust plays. Either he's going to catch a huge fade or he's going to do nothing. So for that reason, I really have no interest in him. I think it's an easy fade. Obviously, there's that chance that he has a huge catch, maybe 3 or 4 huge catches, one of them for a big touchdown. He could be that risky captain option, but I don't think he's one of those guys you put in the flex and feel safe about it. I'd rather get to a guy like Juju, even a guy like Tony in the flex spot, just because they're a little bit safer options and they're more involved. MVS is just probably the most boomer bust guy in the slate. For that reason, I think he's either a captain play or you don't play him at all. But yeah, he's super risky and hate the price tag. And I think that's what most people feel. Moving on to Juju, another guy who he was having a solid season here. So if you look at the first 9 weeks, almost 13, 4, but then 14, he was seeing about 8 targets a game, 9, 6, 25, 28, 18. He had that huge stretch there, 5, 8, 12 targets. And then he really fell off for a few games, caught back up, heated back up, and then he's been terrible since. Obviously, he's been dealing with the injuries. He's had a few concussions here and there. That's kind of kept him out of games. So that's kind of affected him, but I think he's still a pretty safe option. He's kind of their main wide receiver. He really hasn't flashed an upside. I do think they'll keep his ownership low. So I don't mind him in the flex. I think he has enough upside to be a captain. He's obviously a little bit riskier of a captain play, but yeah, I mean, we know he's upside. A couple of his big games, he did break off some huge plays that usually don't happen, like a huge missed tackle, but he has upside to be a captain. I think I prefer him in the flex, but yeah, I do have some interest in Juju Smith-Schuster this week at 5,600. And then Tony as well. He's a guy we need to keep an eye on. He had his ankle and hamstring. He missed the rest of the Cincinnati game. But before that, he's a guy that didn't play a ton of snaps, but when he was out there, he was targeted a good amount, whether it was, catching the ball, 4 targets, obviously 2's not a lot, and then 7, and then rushing the ball as well. They did get him involved rushing the ball. So, yeah, I do have interest in Tony. He's one of those guys, especially when they get close to the red zone. They do all their weird little trick plays, end arounds. He's one of those guys that could easily steal a touchdown here, maybe even 2. So I don't know if I'd play him the captain. I prefer him in the flex, but I think he makes for an interesting flex play. And that's kind of the wide receiver situation. Prefer Juju and Tony over MVS. And then in terms of I guess we'll go over the kicker real fast. I do like Harrison Butker a good amount, especially in high-scoring games. Kickers are more viable than you think. Everyone's going to want to go to the wide receivers, Kelsey, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Hurts, Mahomes. And I don't think people realize kickers are a huge part of the game. Obviously, you score touchdowns, you got to have the extra point, you score field goals. And Butker's a guy who is very solid range. Past 2 games, he's been very solid as well. We know Mahomes and their team struggles offensively at times, moving the ball. So I do like Harrison Butker a good amount. I don't think there's, unless you think it's going to be one of those games that we've never seen before, I don't think, him in the captain spot would be a solid move. You could definitely do it, but I prefer him in the flex. I do like him a good amount. And then in terms of the dart throw plays, Sky Moore's there, Justin Watson there, Noah Gray's there. Out of those 3, I prefer getting to Justin Watson or Noah Gray, just because they do play a decent amount of snaps, as you've seen all season. They've gotten the catch here and there. Maybe they fall into the end zone. They could be like, what was it? Bryson Hopkins. That could be Noah Gray this week. You never know. If 1,200, throw him in there if you want to get super weird contrarian in the flex. And if he falls in the end zone, great, you're set up. And then same thing with Justin Watson. I think I prefer those 2 for that kind of dart throw play over a guy like Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore will move back down to maybe a few snaps at most on the offensive end. And then in terms of the defensive situation, defense will probably be pretty low owned, especially in a very high scoring game. So you can definitely look to the Chiefs. They'll definitely be way less popular than the Eagles, just because they're not as great as the defense. So them at 3,400, you can definitely throw them in the flex, and they could definitely pay off. So yeah, that's kind of my Kansas City situation. Obviously, I talked about Jalen Hurts. I prefer A.J. Brown. I think he's going to be another one of my core plays. So those 3, Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Pacheco. I prefer getting to A.J. Brown over Devontae, even though Devontae has been a little bit more consistent recently. Obviously, he's had huge upside. They do like to throw a ton of screens, and they do prefer throwing it to Devontae. Obviously, A.J. Brown complained, and then they threw him a few more screens as well last game. So I just like the big playability. He's a bigger wide receiver. I do think they're going to ride A.J. Brown this game against this, not so great Kansas City Chiefs secondary. But I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith probably both look like 2 of the best plays of the slate. In terms of the running back situation overall between the Chiefs and the Eagles, it's going to be a huge headache because obviously you got Pacheco, who looks like the clear, obviously, first down back, the rushing back, and it looks like he's maybe stolen the passing back upside over McKinnon, but we know McKinnon has upside there. Also, CEH is back. They can do a 3-back rotation. It can be an absolute nightmare on that end. And then on the Eagles end, we know it's already a nightmare. Sanders is their main running back. He's had upside, but then there's been spots where he does bad, and they just throw in Boston Scott. They throw in Kenneth Gainwell. So another team that they do like playing all 3 backs. It's just going to be a huge headache if you can nail which back it's going to be. I do think people are going to be riskier and go to like a Gainwell and Boston Scott for some salary relief just because they have been getting involved. Maybe that makes a guy like Miles Sanders a little bit better of a play, but it's hard to like that price tag at 7,800. We know the Chiefs, they're not the best rushing defense. There should be very solid upside here for Miles Sanders. So yeah, he's interesting. I just don't know. It really comes down to ownership for me. Like if he's going to be pretty low owned, I do like taking a shot on him. He's definitely a viable captain, but right now he's just kind of off limits for me. Moving on to Dallas Goedert. He hasn't like flashed huge upside in terms of like targets, but he's been solid. We know he had one game against Houston, 9 targets, caught 8 for 100 yards and 27 fantasy points with a touchdown. But besides that, he'll float between 5 to 8 targets a game. I don't know it's enough to be a captain. I don't know if I love it enough, but he's definitely viable as a captain spot. I do really like him in the flex there as well as a safe option. And then moving down to Kenneth Gainwell, I think he's a decent option there. He's obviously seen more rushing attempts than usual. Maybe he'll see 5 to 8 in a normal spot. But obviously those 2 games were blowouts, so they were just rotating backs in and out. So he's definitely a riskier play here. I do think in a close game, maybe he sees like 5 touches. He does have some, passing upside as well, pass catching ability. So, I mean, he's there. I don't love the price tag, but he's definitely there. I do like Jake Elliott a good amount. I talked about how the kickers are decently involved in, high scoring games. Even if in low scoring games, kickers are always involved. I do think the Eagles defense will be decently popular. Mahomes can't really run because of that ankle. He's going to throw the ball. They give up a good amount of sacks. The Eagles defense is very, very good. So I do think people are going to, look to this Eagles defense at only 3,600 and be like, in the flex, that looks pretty solid to me. So for that reason, I do think they're a pretty solid play there. Almost on par with a guy like Miles Sanders for me, as weird as that is to say. I don't love playing defenses, but they just have so much solid upside with how many pass rushers they have and how many sacks they get, how many turnovers they get. So it's hard not to like the Eagles defense when they average almost 10 fantasy points per game. So I think they make a safe play there at 3,600. Boston Scott, more of like that risky play. I do think him and Kenneth Gainwell are more of like that dart throw risky plays. And in terms of like the pass catchers, the dart throw risky plays for them, your best option is probably going to be Zach Pascal. That's really it. They don't really throw it to a lot of people. It's pretty much just the main 3 guys of A.J. Brown, Goddard, and Devontae Smith. Maybe if you want to get super risky, you could get to a Zach Pascal, who maybe has a huge catch for a touchdown. But otherwise, I'd really just stick to the main guys. And that's what kind of makes it easier for the Eagles. They kind of, they either rush it with the quarterback, maybe Miles Sanders, maybe one of the weird running backs, but you don't really have to take a shot and look at the other wide receivers besides the main 2 for the Eagles, which is great. So this is kind of the slate breakdown. Hopefully you guys kind of, learn something. But in terms of like my core plays, it's going to be Jalen Hurts, Pacheco, A.J. Brown. In terms of my favorite captain play right now, it'd probably be A.J. Brown. But let's just throw in, let's just throw in, we'll just go to a Goddard. We'll throw Goddard in there at captain play for me. So then obviously we have Hurts, Goddard, A.J. Brown, which is solid. I prefer getting to A.J. Brown over Goddard. Let's just flip it real fast. A.J. Brown, A.J. Brown, then we'll go Goddard there. So I think this is kind of the route I'm going to go. A.J. Brown, Hurts, Goddard, Pacheco. And then kind of build from there, get a little bit different with the 2 other plays. I don't think you'd be able to fit in Mahomes with this. No, you really wouldn't, unless you want to take a shot and guys that just are not going to play. But yeah, this is kind of the route I'm going to go. 3 main core plays will be A.J. Brown, Goddard, Hurts, and Pacheco, though, for me. And that's going to be the slate breakdown. As I said, it really comes down to how risky you want to be. If you want to be risky, obviously you have that chance of taking down the $1 million first place. It really hasn't happened recently, but there is always that chance. But I think I'm going to go the more chalky route, throw in one of those wide receivers that has huge upside, and then kind of get different from the last 2 flex plays spots for me. So if you guys like the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Can't wait for their NFL next year. Going to have, I'm going to have a PrizePicks function and feature out on hopefully a website next year for you guys where you can compare the odds from PrizePicks to different sports books for free, as well as NFL projections. All that good stuff will be on my Patreon page next August when NFL starts up again. But thank you guys for tuning in for the NFL this year. It's been great. We've had a good amount of success, so looking to continue that into the last slate of the season. So make sure to hit that like button, and I'll see you guys for the rest of the NBA season. Peace.